How y'all feeling out there? Y'all good? Yeah, I love having these conversations. Salute to the United Justice Coalition. Salute to Rock Nation for, giving us a platform to help amplify these conversations. But, I am not an expert. I'm just a person who has some experiences and who decided to start, sharing my story of dealing with anxiety and depression. So I love sitting up here and having these conversations with the experts. So let's bring the experts out right now. I'm going to introduce them when they get out of here. This is my man, Jay Barnett. Make some noise for Jay Barnett. Oh, Dr. Jay Barnett. I'm sorry, Dr. Jay Barnett. That's right. It's my good brother, Elliott Connie. Make some noise for Elliott Connie. And the good sister, Laura Evans. And Derek Hamilton as well. Does everybody want to introduce themselves individually and just, tell them a little bit about what they do? I'll start with you, Derek.
How y'all doing? My name is Derek Hamilton. I'm a deputy director of the Perlmutter Center of Legal Justice at Cardozo, and also the legal director of Family and Friends of the Wrongfully Convicted.
That's right.
Hi, everyone. Thank you all for having me here today. My name is Laura Evans. I'm the Associate Vice President of Public Policy and Government Affairs with Vibrant Emotional Health.
What's up, everyone? My name is Elliott Connie. Thank you so much for having me here. And I'm a licensed psychotherapist, and I've written 5 books about something called solution-focused brief therapy.
And I am Dr. Jay Barnett, former pro athlete turned marriage and family therapist.
That's right. I'm gonna start with you, Jay, because you're a former professional football player. You became a psychotherapist. Can you describe your journey and how you made the transition from professional athlete to a mental health expert, and what inspired that?
I don't necessarily know if it was something that I transitioned into rather than something that I had to move into. Many years ago, back in 2012-13, I shared, began openly about surviving my second suicide attempt after leaving the NFL. And I can remember guys hitting me up and says, yo, bro, what are you doing? We don't talk about that. And it wasn't until I got into therapy that I realized that the help and the guidance that I was receiving, that we did not receive that care, not only just in sports, but as a black man, I had never received that level of care in my entire life. And as I've shared across the country, I remember my first session, the therapist asked me, how was I feeling? And I was at a loss for words. Because as many of you, and particularly for us as black men, we're asked how we're doing, which is associated with performance. And for the first time, I didn't have the words to say how I was feeling because I didn't have the vocabulary to know what my emotional state was. And it was there that I began my journey of healing and began this journey of discovering myself from the abandonment, the physical abuse, the daddy issues, and all of those different things, and what the divorce of my parents did to me. Because what I did with football is I put that helmet on and I hid. And healing and therapy allowed me to find myself outside of just being a football player, and I was able to identify myself as just being a human being. And most of us never get the opportunity to do that because we are focused on human doing. And just the very essence of me being was something that I hadn't discovered, and I was able to do that. And what I realized, I was a black man in therapy, an athlete who was scared and terrified because I didn't want anybody to know that I had all these issues. And so it led me to go back to school and not only just become a therapist, because I said, I don't want to just advocate. I want to really make this thing relational, that when I'm sitting down and I'm looking at another black man in front of me, I'm not just talking about his blackness, I'm just speaking to the little boy in him. And that is where I began my journey in saying, if every black man or every black boy could get to experience not just the healing component, but a mirror that shows him not just who he thinks he is, but shows him who he's running from. And that's my journey.
Wow. Yeah, make some noise for Jay. Dr. Jay Barnett. Now, Elliott, you've written about growing up under difficult circumstances, but you've gained a lot of strength from your adversity, like a lot of us do. Can you describe how you developed the resilience to overcome challenges and why you committed yourself to addressing unmet mental health needs of people?
Yeah, I can try. I grew up like many people. My father had his own trauma. My father was raised in inner city Chicago in the 1950s and 60s. And I don't know that he had the skills to love his children. And it came out in anger, it came out in abuse, it came out in physical discipline, it came out in a real difficult way. So I spent most of my life really anxious and depressed. I spent most of my life really struggling. And I got to about 19 years old and I decided I wanted to end my life. And the best way I can describe this to people is I felt like I looked around and I saw everybody else's life, and this is before social media, but like everybody looked happy and joyous and they were getting hugs, and I had to go home to hell, like actual literal hell. And I just didn't want it anymore. And I was laying in my bed one day. I was in college at the time. I was laying in my bed knowing that I had about a week left to live because I knew exactly what was gonna happen. And God spoke to me. Now, I don't know if you guys, I know that might sound crazy, but I don't know if you've ever had a moment, I'm a crier, so if I start crying, y'all gotta forgive me. But I don't know if you've ever had a moment where you felt like God just took the wheel in this moment.
Absolutely.
So I was laying in my dorm room bed, knowing I got about a week left to live, and for whatever reason, I started thinking about the eulogy at my funeral. And I thought of all my close friends and all my teammates standing behind a podium saying things like, we didn't know he was this sad, we didn't know he was this hurt, we didn't know he was struggling this bad. And I found that to be completely unacceptable. Because what I wanted them to say was, we didn't know his dad was such an asshole. I wanted them to say, we didn't know his father was killing his soul his entire life. And in that moment, I decided to outlive my pain. And I started doing things that were unusual to me at the time. I started making decisions about boundaries. If my father's trying to kill my soul, I need to protect myself from that person. So I started giving my father boundaries. And when he didn't obey those boundaries, I did not allow myself to talk to him. I changed my major from marine biology to psychology because I wanted to understand the human mind. I started to envision a future where there was no pain, because once you make the decision that I'm going to outlive this pain, then I also have to define what that day looks like. How will I know that I've outlived this pain? And I got so excited. For the first time in my life, I was happy. My circumstances hadn't changed, but for the first time in my life, I was in control, I was on a mission, I was on a purpose. And I got so excited about how this was causing me to heal. Literally, the very next semester, I got a 4.0. The very next semester, I met the woman that would become my wife. Literally, and then I realized something very powerful, at least to me, that there really is no such thing as a problem. We all have problems. So look, it's not about trying to remove problems from my life, because there's nobody on earth that doesn't have problems. And in my head, that changed problems to tests. And now my job is to pass the test. And once I realized that, I wanted to help other people get on a healing journey so they could pass their tests too. I think a lot of us get into this mentality where it's like, I want to fix what's wrong with us. But there's no perfect person on the planet. And probably the most beautiful thing I ever learned or realized was that what that must mean, if there's no perfect person on the planet, that must mean there's no perfectly imperfect person either. So that means every single person has some brilliance. And maybe life is about trying to find the brilliance that my father hid from me. And if my father tried to hide my brilliance, there are other people who have people in their life trying to hide theirs. So I wanted to help other people uncover their brilliance.
Man, I got to do one quick follow-up. Elliott is an amazing psychotherapist. I've had quite a few sessions with him, but is that how you came up with solution-focused therapy?
No, I actually didn't come up with solution-focused brief therapy. It's been around for about 50 years or so, but so much of psychotherapy is about figuring out what's wrong with you and helping you deal with it. And I just didn't associate with that. Like when I went to graduate school and started learning about psychotherapy, I couldn't associate with that. And then in this one corner of this one book, there was this literally 2 pages about solution-focused brief therapy, and I was like, this is aligning with my journey, and this is what I want to do. In graduate school, they tell us things that are just weird to me. Like, for example, that we should be trying to fix people's problems, but as I just said, we all have problems. So if you try to fix your problem, you're gonna spend the rest of your life paying really close attention to what's wrong with you, and you're never gonna figure it out. And I found this thing, and everybody told me you shouldn't do it, you shouldn't do it. I've been to 30 countries teaching people how to do solution-focused brief therapy. I've written 5 books. I'm working on TV shows, podcasts. Like, if you talk about hope and love, like, people will listen. And for me, that was the only approach that spoke to that.
That's right. Laura, you began as an aide to a member of the Ohio legislature, and now you lead an organization that provides mental health solutions to communities. And there are so many obstacles people face obtaining mental health services, too few providers, long wait lists, social stigma. How big is the problem, and how are organizations like yours addressing it?
Yeah, well, first of all, thank you for the question. Thank you for having me here. Again, I'm not a clinician, so it is more of that public policy focus, but my background is similar. There's a similar vein here in that mental health, mental illness, suicidation, all of that is really, everyone has a connection to it. So every 11 minutes, one person dies by suicide. We know that 1 in 5 young people, 13 to 18, are currently or will at some point experience serious emotional distress. And 1 in 25 adults live with a serious mental illness. So my organization, Vibrant Emotional Health, we're based in New York City, and we offer direct community service programs across the lifespan to help not only young people, but their families, older adults. And then we are the administrator of 2 national programs, one, the 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline, which is available 24/7. It is a 3-digit number that you can call, chat, or text to reach a trained crisis counselor if you are feeling suicidal, if you are in distress. And then we also operate the Disaster Distress Helpline. When we think about those programs, it's so important because right now, and what I experienced in the past with a loved one who had a serious mental illness, is that we didn't have the vocabulary. We did not know the words. We didn't know anxiety. We just knew they had nerves. We did not have the tools for when my loved one was experiencing psychosis, what to do. And so that meant calling 911. That was the only option available. That led to my loved one becoming increasingly interfacing with the criminal justice system, not because he had committed crimes, but because no one knew what to do. And so that happens a lot, not only in our community, but across the country. And so the work that Vibrant is doing, particularly with the 988 Lifeline, in partnership with SAMHSA, the federal government agency that set up the program, is ensuring that when people are feeling distressed, they know that you can call, talk to a trained crisis counselor in lieu of calling 911, right? That we can get a mobile crisis team to your location if it's needed. In some cases, it may not be, in lieu of police who frankly don't necessarily have that training on how to assist someone who's going through a mental health crisis. All of this is really important when we're talking about diverting from unnecessary jail, unnecessary hospitalizations, when we talk about the cost of these programs, because they are costing our state budgets, our local budgets, our federal budgets, and they're not actually serving people who are in crisis. We're not actually helping them. And so the work that we're doing in partnership with others is to make sure that we are filling in that gap and finally putting some resources towards that.
Thank you for your service. Good brother Derek. Now, we was chopping it up backstage. Your experience in prison was 21 years, right?
Yes.
21 years, that would have an impact on anybody's mental health. And you said the law saved my life. Can you describe your experience, how you were unjustly convicted and how you used education to change your life and help others?
Yes. So I spent 21 years in prison for a crime I did not commit. During that time, I had to litigate through the criminal justice system of being a young man, uneducated. All I had was a GED. I didn't have a college degree. I didn't have any of the education that lawyers had. So I had to go to the law library and read every single CPL book, every single criminal law book there was to be able to meet the intelligence of the courtroom. So every single day, what I would do is read books and read books and read books. Going in the courtroom and having a system tell you you're guilty for something you didn't do is the most depressing thing in the world. Speaking to a lawyer that tells you, why would they pick you out of all of the black people in New York? Why would this cop frame you? Why would he do it to you? You don't have the answer. I didn't have the answer, but what I did know, that the injustice that I was experiencing was bigger than me, and that if I was to ever get out of prison, that I had to learn about the criminal justice system and be able to defend myself, because my advocate, my lawyer, didn't believe in me. So that's what I did. I just studied law, and I studied law, and I studied law in a toxic environment in prison. What people don't know is that prison is a very, very toxic environment, that the people that you put in office to protect us destroys us. The correction officer need more mental health than the person that they send in prison, right? So when we talk about mental health, we got to talk about first the people that's put there to serve us, right? If you're sending me upstate to a place like Attica and Clinton, and that the whole basis of that town is a prison or industrial complex, they don't want me to get out. They want me to stay in jail so they can have job security, right? So they're gonna abuse me, they're gonna treat me indifferent. And when I goes to a mental health counselor and then say, look, man, like I'm going through it. Like I'm having thoughts of suicide, right? Or I'm having thoughts of actually harming somebody because I'm thinking about the person that put me in prison. He says, well, as a black man, that's normal. Like a lot of y'all in here have these thoughts. So I automatically frown upon mental health, right? I said, I don't want to talk to no more of these people because they don't even know me, but they're judging me. So for me, I had to just, like I said, educate myself, take the anger that I was experiencing and put it into a positive way, and I did that through the law. And I became an advocate for so many black men that was in prison that was innocent. And I began getting these brothers. And I began getting these brothers out. And I began freeing them, and I got a title called Jailhouse Lawyer, which wasn't an honorable thing because God used that to say, what do you think, you're a jailhouse lawyer? When you're defending somebody. And I became good at it. I became so good at it that judges called me in their chambers and said, young man, I don't know if you're guilty or not, but you should do something else with your life if you wrote this motion. So I started believing in myself. And I started filing motions after motions after motions with other people and was getting them out. And I did 21 years. And there came a time in 2009 when I started going for the parole board. And at that time, I was in a facility called Shawanga. And I had filed a petition against the jail because the water they was giving us was black. It was coming from the well. And they was lying, saying that the water was good. And I filed the petition basically saying that, look, man, these people are trying to kill us here. And they threw me in special housing unit on something called administrative segregation. And I knew that I was going to the parole board, and the counselor for the parole board was telling me, despite that I was innocent, that I had to go to the board and say that I was guilty. And the dilemma of that was just so much for me to bear that I'm not going there and say I killed somebody I didn't kill, right? And they saying, well, you're not gonna get out of jail. If you don't go in there and say you killed this man, you're not gonna get out of jail. So my experience in the law at that time taught me that if they have provisions in the law that can send somebody on parole violation, that these same provisions should apply to present evidence. So I challenged the parole board. I said, under your executive law, I want you to subpoena these witnesses, because I had cops who said I was innocent. I had alibis who said I was innocent. I had the judge in my case who said that I was innocent, but I was still in prison. So I used that evidence and went before the parole board, and I convinced the parole board, a conservative parole board, based on the evidence that I had that I was innocent. And they paroled me in 2011. And that's how I began doing this work.
Can you tell us, Derek, how you just maintained mentally, because you did 10 years solitary confinement too, right?
Yes. Yes.
How did that impact you?
It was the most degrading experience in my life. Again, we're dealing with sadistic guards who, because I knew the law and was filing suits against them, would put me next to people that would throw feces in my cell all day or urine in my cell all day. They was trying to break me and make me indifferent. It was the most terrible experience that you can imagine. People banging on your wall all day, trying to make you insane. And at times you go insane. I found myself arguing with a mentally ill person and then saying, what am I doing here? I'm becoming him. So it was those moments, man, and when I was blessed to catch myself, that survived me. But more than anything, it was a woman in my life that visited me, that came and seen me, that told me to keep it going when I was going through it. So, it was challenging. And I just got to say that, again, when you talk about special housing, it's very degrading, brother. I mean, like, you wouldn't imagine some of the things that I've seen. I've seen a guy take a pen and pull his eyeball out, right? And tell a guard, take it, take it, take it. And you sitting there witnessing these things, seeing people hang up and kill themselves. And because guards laugh about this, they thought it was a joke. And they thought that it was their job to drive us insane and not heal us. So I want us to all know that we have a responsibility, man, in changing these prisons and making sure that people get healed in there and not suffer.
Dr. J and Elliott, I want to ask y'all, when y'all hear the good brother Derek talk, what comes up for y'all?
I'm still processing. I mean, to come out of something like that, because so many times when people are having an episode, they don't make it on the other side. And I just want to say to you, black man, it is a blessing to see you here in your right mind.
Thank you.
How do we make these facilities, these so-called correctional facilities, actual correctional facilities?
I mean, you talk about the agencies. When I go into healthcare, I'm one of few individuals that are working in healthcare with a clinical background. A lot of these people are in these agencies don't even understand the policies that they're writing. So the only way to change what is happening in the correction facilities is that you have to change the systems. So it's like when people come in therapy and they says, fix my son or fix my daughter, and I say to them, well, if I fix them and send them back home, you're just going to break them again and they'll be back here. The only way to change this, the kid is you have to change the system. But the system changes everyone involved in it. And so to change a system that is degrading individuals, and I think someone said it earlier, dehumanizing, and that's one of the things that I advocate for, and particularly when it comes to black men. Because I can walk by a brother and I can feel his pain. I can look at a man's eye and I can see the little boy in him. And so many of us has been broken, not just by the system, but the environment has broken us. And when you come from a broken environment, it has broken your confidence. It has broken your self-awareness. It has broken everything in you, so you don't even want to show up in the world. So when I see a brother blowing a sweet, or I see a brother on the corner drinking, my first thought is not why is he here. My first thought is that he's stuck. And he's unable to get out of his process. And I think what we do here today is understanding that the only way it changes is we have to change the system. And you change the system by changing who you put in it.
Can I add on to that? Because I also, I do want to, because this is my jam, I love public policy. I think we need to follow the money. As you said, there are systems in place that incentivize more people being incarcerated. There are systems in place that incentivize using highly restrictive interventions that aren't actually proven to be effective. But because that's what insurance pays for, or that's what Medicaid pays for, and Medicare pays for, then that's what providers are doing, because you need to follow the money. And so we need to make sure that we are holding all of our officials accountable and putting on that pressure to say, that doesn't work. No, we are not doing that anymore, because that's not actually serving anyone. And I recognize that I'm the only Black woman on this panel, so I also want to note that for Black women watching, our Black kings experience this and become incarcerated or struggle with mental health. That's also a burden for Black women as well, because we're trying to hold y'all down and work on our mental health and keep the families together. So I do think it is just very broad in terms of we need to make sure that we are, having our own support systems, being together as a community, but also working to dismantle these systems and taking out the incentives for people to become incarcerated or criminalizing their mental illness.
That's right. Elliott. That's right. Elliott, what came up for you?
I mean, obviously, when you listen to somebody like Derek talk, several things come up for me, but the number one thing that comes up for me is what an example of an unbreakable human spirit he is. And I think the biggest responsibility that we have as advocates for Black mental health is this is a man who spent 21 years in prison. He described probably 0.001% of the atrocities that he witnessed. And just one story he told, I'm over here wincing, like I don't want to hear that. And he saw that every single day and maintained the ability to get himself out of prison. And when I hear those stories, I clap for him, man, like, because that's incredible. And when I hear those stories, the responsibility for me is, like, I want to talk to him, like, what's that magic that he has inside of him so that everybody out there can discover that magic inside of themselves. And we need to be able to identify talent in young people so he doesn't have to use that talent to get himself out of prison. He can use that talent to build $1 billion business or run his family or whatever. Like, the Black journey is being undiscovered and your voice not mattering, and he had to use that talent to get himself out of a tragedy that he did not deserve to be in. So when I hear him talk, I just think, what an unbelievable example of the human spirit.
That's right. Everybody can benefit from the work that everybody on this stage does. And, you brought up young people, Elliott. What do you think are the specific mental health challenges and needs of the Black young people that, people like you and Jay and Laura work with?
I'll tell you guys something that, unless you went to graduate school, you probably don't know. But I went to graduate school and read a book, a very credible book about culture in psychotherapy. And this very credible book said Black people are not interested in their mental health. Like, in an accredited graduate program, that's what they told me. So I think what we have to do as young people, and Jay talked about this, is we have to be able to be open about our mental health journey because the world doesn't think we care. Like, look around this room. Obviously we care. We all came together and gathered here today to talk about these things, but they literally publish in books that I studied in graduate school, like, just a few years ago about your mental health journey. And I think we need to be open about it. I think we need to give ourselves permission about it. I think we need to listen to people like him, and we need to listen to people like Jay. We need to listen. We need to be verbal about it. We need to be vulnerable with each other. We need to be uncomfortable. And we need to understand, like, I've studied almost every problem in the world. I've never met a problem that couldn't be impacted positively by more self-love, by more self-awareness of your brilliance, and more understanding of where we've come from. And I think as a Black community, we need to, A, do that, and then B, be vocal and verbal about it.
You want to jump on that, Jay?
So I want to contextualize this in a way for everyone to understand. You have mental health, and you have mental health issues and mental health disorders. Mental health, if I can just give it in a more simpler term, is life in motion. It's your emotional, it's your physical, it's your social, it's how you do life. How you get up in the morning is mental health. How you go to sleep at night is mental health. Now, you have the mental health issues and disorders. That's the bipolar, that's the depression, the anxiety, the eating disorders, and all those different things. And one things that I would say to all the young people in here, and I see a lot of students in here, if I can not give you any more thing that is simple, this. Manage your time on social media. The amount of young people that I see on a weekly basis and how all of their depression, anxiety, suicidal ideation, all of those things are magnified because of their hours that they're spending scrolling. the hours that you're comparing, the hours that you're looking into somebody who's giving you this highlight reel, which is a filter of their life, which is not reality. And it is increasing not just in the youth, also in the adults. We have people who are less happy because they think someone has a better life. And I tell you something, let's just be real. These folks ain't living like this. And I'm not just talking about and I'm not just talking about this stuff. People are not really showing you what's happening. I never forget, bro, a husband and wife. The wife said, I wish our marriage was as perfect as what we displayed on social media. Dang. She said this in a session. She said, on social media, we have the best marriage. But she says, who we are in reality, this is not it.
They still together?
Still together, still working it out. Still in the process. But I would say, focus on what is real rather than what you're wanting people to perceive, what could be and what possibly. And this is impacting our mental health. One of the things that I really encourage everybody, create moments of silence. Mother Teresa said something that was so powerful. She says, God is a friend to silence, solitude, and stillness. Find time to sit still. To my brothers in here, because it's very difficult for us to do this as men. Find time to just be. We're not living long, men, because we don't process our emotions well. We don't open up. We don't talk. We're not really enjoying life. We're just working. And there's nothing wrong with being a provider and being productive and all those great things. But brothers, can I tell you, there's more to life than what you're experiencing. And we deserve to have moments of joy.
Right.
And I'll say this, because brothers, when you become free, it frees our communities. It's going to free the pressures from our sisters having to bear, because this suicide things amongst black men right now, we don't have enough time to talk about how black men are leaving here by way of suicide. And I grew up in the South where they said that was a white folks thing. It's becoming a people's thing now. And as I said yesterday on my social media, people are not dying because they're tired of living. People are dying because they don't know what to do with their pain. And pain has a funny way of talking to you in your ear and telling you that you don't belong and that you don't deserve and that you're not worthy. And if you and everybody's not going to go to therapy, but find a place that may be therapeutic where you can learn how to channel your pain into something else rather than just coping through unhealthy mechanisms. Because most of us are just really just kind of getting by. And if you're really wanting to get control of your mental health, it's really taking time to say, what can I do not to fix what is wrong, but what can I correct what went wrong? And that's the trauma. It's what went wrong that created these behaviors and these maladaptive personas. So, you know.
Charlamagne, if I could just add something.
Please, I'm interested in hearing from all of y'all how we can help to educate and motivate young people. So please, Derek, go.
So I want to say that there's something called brainwave matter that a conservative Supreme Court has identified, that there's a part of adolescent brain that don't develop until they're 25 years old, right? So as a community, we need to understand this. And when young people do things that's not good, we shouldn't shun them. The old adage that it takes a village. Like, we need to understand that young kids are gonna do some dumb things, and that we should teach them through the process that, look, it's okay that you did something done. That one thing don't define you, right? Because you may have did a gangster act don't make you a gangster, right? You just did something that gangsters do. Like, when I was a kid, I used to watch Gangster Chronicles and go out in the street and try to be a gangster. I didn't understand that I was gonna go to jail for that there was consequences for that, right? We don't teach consequences to young people.
That's right.
And I think that, and when we start teaching them consequences, I didn't learn consequences until I went in prison, right? In prison, they give you a program called ART, and they teach you short-term, long-term consequences. Who you gonna affect, your family members, what they're gonna go through. We need to teach those programs out here to prevent people from going to prison, right? So, you know, we recognize that young people are gonna be young people, And as a village, we should intervene, all of us, right? And we need to educate parents on how to do that, right? Your son is gonna do something wrong, right? Teach them, walk them through that process and say, look, that's not you. That one act don't define you. I'm gonna help you become a better person. So I just want to add that in, brother.
I want to go to you too, Laura. What's the best ways to educate and motivate young people to get help?
I think social media is so important because the kids are there. And I think it was the last panel that said we need to meet people where they are. Well, they're on social media. They're not even on Instagram anymore. They're on Snapchat and TikTok. And so in order to give students the tools that they need to help them learn that a lot of this is fake on social media, we need to go where they are. And so Vibrant partners with the social platforms. We work with the search platforms to ensure that if someone is looking up how to harm themselves, that they see the resources, that if they're struggling and they're looking for help, there's online screenings that you can then use that information, take it to your parents or a trusted loved one to say, this is what's happening in my world. Alternatively, we also need to educate the parents. We need to move upstream. There's Mary Giliberte from Mental Health America always likes to say, crisis is not a win. It's not a win that we have all this investment in crisis services, although it's very needed. We need to move further upstream to make sure that we have more protective factors for our children, that schools are teaching them mental health first aid, that we are giving everyone the tools they need to take care of their mental well-being. Again, it's going to be a spectrum. Some days you might have a great day. Sometimes it might not be such a good day, but when you're having good days and bad days and what to do to ensure that we're not moving down that path towards, death by suicide. And I think it was CDC data that just came out that said suicides actually went up, the number of deaths from suicide. And so we know this is a real problem, particularly with the pandemic and people feeling isolated socially. We need to make sure that we're going to where the students are, the young people are, and let's not forget our older adults. They're also struggling as well with loneliness. So I think it is, reaching them, but also, again, systems change. How can we build in those platforms, those protections within the platforms? Because those platforms are making money off of everyone who's on there. So we need to make sure that they're not selling data for young people, and again, not forcing within their For You page all of this, activity that is glorifying, eating disorders and glorifying just what's not real. So I think that's, my 2 cents and where Vibrant stands.
Go ahead, Jim.
I was just going to say, to add to what you said, Laura, the most search statement or question after 12 a.m. was how to take your life. Yeah. It's the most search phrase after 12 a.m. on Google is how to die by suicide.
But this is also why I think your work in writing policy is so important, because we should be advocating for these social media platforms have these algorithms so down. And so I'm going to say something that you guys are probably going to lose respect for me for say this, but I'm going to say it anyway. I'm a little bit mischievous. And my mother doesn't really understand technology. So every now and then I'll be in Chicago visiting my mother, and I'll search things super inappropriate that my mother's gonna get ads for later, because she, right? Because that's
psychotherapist trolling.
I love my mother, but I got to poke her a little bit. So I'll search things. I ain't gonna say what it is, but I'll search things. And my mother be like, "Why is my mom always seeing all these ads for this?" And I'm like, "Cause I searched it on your computer." But to Jay's point. And you guys ever have a moment where you thought social media was literally listening to your thoughts? Because you start seeing, right? To Jay's point, if the number one search term, I told you all you lose respect for me, I really do that. If the number one search term after midnight is how to take my life, why isn't the next ad they see something about psychotherapy or finding an organization? We need policy that says, if you're gonna have all these teens searching this topic, and we know that, then you're gonna have to see, because I don't see ads like that.
Yes. Well, you should, because it is now, if you search on Google, how to harm yourself or how to die by suicide, the chatbot box comes up for the 988 Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. You can hit it, connects you directly to a trained crisis counselor who can help walk you through that distress.
Exactly
we know about the Reddit boards where they're sharing information on what to order in order to poison yourself. I think the question becomes, if we know this, what are our policymakers doing? How are we putting pressure on them to say this information should not be available? They should not be encouraging students to take their lives, or dying by suicide. We should not be allowing companies to profit off of putting this forward to young people who are still developing their brain.
We got almost less than 5 minutes left, so let's expound on that and end on that. How can we encourage people who urgently need help but who might otherwise avoid traditional counseling or therapy? Whoever want to take it.
Well, I'm gonna say something that a brother who was Nelson Cruz, he's here somewhere in France to tell. Both of these brothers did over 20 years in prison. And we had a symposium recently, and another incarcerated brother was moderating it, and what he said was that you can't diagnose yourself, right? That it's impossible for you to diagnose your mental illness, right? When you go to the doctor and you say something's wrong with my arm, you listen to the doctor if he said you sprained it or you broke it. Mental illness need to be diagnosed by a professional, right? And we need to know that it's okay to go out and get an evaluation to see if there's something wrong with us, right? Get away from that stigma, right? Because your mental is everything, right? So if you don't know, of course you're not gonna know if it's something mentally wrong with you. You don't have the expertise to do that. So I would like to say feel comfortable in knowing like you go to the doctor for your physical body, you need to go to the doctor for your mental body just to see if you're okay. Don't mean that you're crazy, mean you wanna get checked out.
That's right. Laura, what do you think? How can we encourage people who urgently need help?
I would say get involved in the political process, know your policies, know not only just the federal level, but state and local. And what I love about Gen Z is that we're seeing them, they're already engaged, so I feel like I'm preaching to the choir. They're running for office. That's how we build the pipeline. That's how we start to change these policies, by saying this doesn't work, and it hasn't worked for my community, and now I'm in a position to make that change. So again, just hold their feet to the fire, keep them accountable, and get involved.
Elliott, same question, but being that you're a psychotherapist, how can we encourage people who need help but who might, avoid traditional counseling or therapy?
I'll answer that in 2 ways. I think one of the things that was important for me when I became a psychotherapist, and I'm somewhat embarrassed to admit this, but I couldn't find myself in my field. So when I graduated, I wrote my very first book. I've always enjoyed reading and writing, and I wrote my first book, and people started asking me to show up at conferences and give lectures. And I grew up in inner city Boston. Like, I'm a product of the hip hop culture, but I would try to put on the uniform of professional in the mental health field, and it didn't feel right until one day I just didn't recognize myself in the mirror, and I wanted to become who I represent so that y'all could feel safe to come into therapy. And I think as professionals, we have an obligation to be safe for y'all coming into therapy, and therapy has not always been safe. So I love seeing people like Dr. J, because you need to see us in this form looking like you. When I went to graduate school, I literally read 0 books, 0 chapters of a person of color in the entire history of the field of psychotherapy. So my goal was to become that. And I get hundreds of emails a day, literally from people all over the world. My favorite emails when people tell me I was an answer to a test question in their graduate school program, because now nobody has to go through that again. Yes. So that's from the perspective of the professional. The other answer I want to give is from the perspective of the person. I want you to believe in your future so much that you're willing to be uncomfortable to achieve it. And if you can envision a different future, then you'll understand therapy is about helping you manifest that future that you envision, and you're going to have to do uncomfortable things in order to get there. And if you go to a therapist and that person's not helpful, fire that person and go to another one. And if the next one's not helpful, fire them and go to another one. And if the next one's not, fire them and go to another one. Believe in your future so much that you do not quit. The world rewards people who refuse to stop moving towards their goals.
Dr. J, take us home, brother.
I thought we was going to go home after you, Elliott. No, that was so profoundly, man, and so poignantly spoken. What I would want to say to those that are sitting out here, the quality, the state of your mental health is going to determine the quality of your life. The state of your mental health is going to determine the quality of your life. It's associated with your mind, body, and spirit, with your emotional, with your spiritual, with your mental, and how you even take care of yourself physically, because how you take care of your physically is a part of your mental health as well. Listen, I know the world makes us think that we're machines, but we're humans. You cannot work 8/24. You cannot grind and not think that your body is not going to shut down on you. You cannot stroll all night and think that you're going to be ready for the test and think that you're going to be ready for your presentation. You have got to start handling yourself as if you are a walking being that needs, number one, rest. Because we're not resting as a people, as a country. We're sleeping, but we're not resting. Our souls are tired. There's so much trauma in our community that therapy is still new to us. I've been in the field 10 years. And 3 years since we've been talking about it, since the pandemic, it's still new. And as Elliott said, it's a Eurocentric practice. Therapy was for rich white men. It was not for black people, people of color, brown folks. They did not have us in mind. So as you are entering into this space, because mental health has become very ubiquitous. It's everywhere. Everyone is talking about it. But can I tell you, it's going to determine how you show up in the world. I'm a therapist who has a therapist. I was just talking to her 3 days ago, 60-year-old black woman, amazing. She says, what's going on? Tell me about your personal life. And I'm just like, I got this going on. But she says, tell me what's going on inside of you. Because a lot of times we're so focused on what's going on around us, but we forget what's going on inside determines what happens on the outside. We're showing up in relationships broken. We're showing up at the job broken. We're showing up everywhere broken. And therapy will help you to take those broken pieces and find the context clues to not what's wrong, but what if therapy helps you to discover what's right with you? Because it's easy to focus on what's wrong, but there's a lot that's right in you that I love that therapy allows you to see. And let me say this, there's not many of us in the field, and those that are in the field, we're overworked. Some of us have a waiting list of months, so you may have to keep searching. And you may have to try one person out and it doesn't work. Therapy is like dating.
Not that kind of dating, yo. Not that kind of dating.
Not that kind, and meaning like, you kind of got to find your fit because it's about the relationship. Because as I tell most therapists, we even have to continue doing our work because a therapist can't take you any deeper than they haven't gone within their own internal work. So it may not be easy to find a therapist, but I can tell you this, whether it's counseling, coaching, find a place where you can get the answers to the questions that you have in here. Because what goes on in here determines how you live outwardly. And all of you deserve to live a life of quality because living a life of survival is exhausting. It's exhausting, black folks.
That's right.
And we deserve to move into the space where we can thrive, And sometimes thriving is just being able to get at your house and sit on your couch and say, I'm at peace.
That's right. Let's thrive, y'all. Thank you, Derek Hamilton. Thank you, Laura Evans. Thank you, Elliott Connie. Thank you, Dr. J. Barnett. Appreciate y'all. Thank you, United Justice Coalition.